Hi, everybody. Welcome to Corelight Spiritual Weather Report. It's August 28th, 2022, and this is Brad. And as always, welcome to everyone. I know we have a lot of returning long-time Corelighters and also many new people each month. So welcome to everyone. And I just love being together with you in the field of love. And I wish we could get together physically. I don't know about you, but it's been a long time since we've had physical gatherings, and I just miss you. And I think we miss each other, and I think we all miss the physical contact. At least that's what I hear from people, and it's my experience. So hopefully that'll happen. I would love to start having physical events again, maybe starting next year. I guess it'll depend on world events and so on, but let's trust that we're moving back in that direction. So how are you? It's amazing that we're at the end of the summer already in the Northern Hemisphere, and winter is almost over in the Southern. So does it feel like time is accelerating more and more with each passing month? That's how it feels to me, and it's been that way for so many years. It's just extraordinary that it can keep accelerating in that way. So I hope you're coping okay with the intensity of the energies that we've been dealing with. It's been such a powerful time. August has been such a powerful month, and it was, like we talked about last time, it was an incredibly intense and powerful Lionsgate this year. I hope you've been okay through it and that you've been able to harness those energies and use them for your growth. I know sometimes when it's very intense, we can feel kind of taken out by the spiritual energy. But I know for me personally, and for most people I know, it's been a time to slow down and take stock and just take baby steps each day, as much as we're able to. So I wonder if I'm thinking about what I've been through, and I wonder if you're going through the kind of formlessness and the unknown as much as I have. I know for me it's been very challenging, and for many people I know. It's almost like somebody pressed a pause button and we're kind of wandering around in a haze. It can feel very unproductive and even scary, but it's really been such an important time for renewing and redirecting the energies. And there are also some really exciting new doorways opening. So anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're going to be talking about all of this today. So let me just mention the themes. When I tuned in on the energy, here are the themes that I got to discuss today. We're going to continue talking about the rising power of the feminine, for one thing. This has been a theme for the past couple of months, but those energies are still with us in a very powerful way. So we'll look at some new aspects of the power of the feminine. And anyway, I'll elaborate later on that. The second topic is transmuting fear and anxiety. The third topic is opening to new opportunities. The fourth is the power of slowing down and taking stock. The fifth is what is spiritual surrender? The sixth is clearing cynicism and despair. And the seventh is developing the power of purity. So for anybody who's new to our spiritual weather report calls, I start by offering a guided meditation, and then I speak about the prevailing energies that are affecting us and the topics I just mentioned and the spiritual principles that are most helpful for us right now. And then we have time for questions and answers and sharing, and then we close the session with a prayer or a brief guided meditation or whatever we have time for. And if you need to leave before the call ends, you can always listen to the recording later. We do send out the link to our email list, and it's also posted on YouTube later. And before we start our guided meditation, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for participating in Leslie's birthday celebration on August 12th. I hope you felt it like I did. It was very powerful, and Leslie had a delightful birthday. I gave her a giant vase of white lilies, which are her favorite, and it was so sweet. She cried. She cried with joy a few times during the day, and in fact, she reminded me of a spiritual teaching that I heard her first give, had to be over 30 years ago, and it's about flowers. And the teaching is that flowers hold the energy of purity, spiritual purity. It's a very rarefied energy, and if you meditate on beautiful flowers, or whether it's a vase of flowers or the flowers in your garden, their beauty and their purity can help you move into a state of unity consciousness. It's like flowers hold an enlightened consciousness, and you can raise your vibration and the vibration of your space by bringing flowers in. And if you've been around Corelight for any length of time, you'll remember we always used to have lots of beautiful flowers in the room at our meditation events. And this is why. So you can give it a try. If you need a boost of energy, bring some flowers in. And in fact, we're going to talk about spiritual purity later today in the call, because it's one of our themes for today, like I mentioned. And I also, before we start, I wanted to thank everybody who has participated in our Sacred Art Gallery fundraiser this month, which helps to keep our nonprofit going. We really appreciate your support. And in case you don't know about it, in honor of Leslie's birthday, the fundraiser is that we're offering 25% off everything in our online Sacred Art Gallery through Monday, September 5th, which in the U.S. is Labor Day Monday. And there are some beautiful new pieces of Leslie's art in the gallery now. So if you've been eyeing a piece of Leslie's art, this is a great opportunity to get it. You still have about a week left of the sale, a little over a week, and you'll be helping to get the transmission of healing energy out into the world that Leslie imbues into the art. And you'll also save 25%. And you'll also be supporting Seeds of Light, Seeds of Light's children's art program, to be specific, which is for the kids we support in South Africa. We give a percentage of all those proceeds from sacred art sales to that program. And even if you can't afford some of the higher end pieces of art, there are some really beautiful museum quality greeting cards of Leslie's paintings that are very affordable. And the gallery is at corelight.org on the main menu under Sacred Art. So I invite you to go check that out and participate in our fundraiser to help our nonprofit keep going. Thank you. Okay, so without further ado, let us start with our guided meditation for the day. So I invite you now to get quiet and get comfortable and close your eyes and take some long, slow, deep breaths. Just relaxing, letting go. Breathing in the light. Breathing out any tension in your body. Breathing in this present moment. Breathing out any concerns about the past or the future. Breathing in love. Breathing out any shadow. Breathing in peace. Breathing out any stress. Let's just continue our breathing, which is the body's signal to relax. Long, slow, deep breathing tells the body that everything's okay. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, just being right here, right now, giving yourself the gift of this present moment. with your spiritual path. Just receiving. As you breathe, just go completely yin, which is the receptive energy. Just let go. Well, as you keep breathing, I just invite you to be aware of the energy. And as you probably know, at some level of her being, Leslie overlights these calls. And there is a transmission of healing energy that comes in through from another level. And in fact, happens throughout the call. And so I invite you to be meditative throughout the call, even when we're talking, and to receive the transmission even during the discussion part of the call. I know we do a lot of talking on these calls, but the truth is that by far the most important part of the calls is the energy, to receive the light, to receive the love that is part of this field of unity consciousness that we are part of, that we're sitting in. And this is true whether you're with us live today or whether you're listening to the recording in the future. It doesn't matter. We're all part of that field. We're all connected at that level. Time and space don't really exist except in the third dimension. So as you breathe and as you relax, I just invite you to tune in to these other levels of reality beyond time and space. And that is the field of love and the field of unity, where it's very easy to just relax and allow the transmission of light to come in. And it doesn't matter if you're feeling it or not, it still happens. And it's not like anybody's doing anything to you. It just is a field that we're part of, and that we can receive these beautiful, uplifting energies. So as you breathe, let's do a full body muscular relaxation, as we always do to start. And I invite you to feel and visualize a warm liquid pouring over the top of your head like honey, relaxing all of the muscles that it touches. Just keep breathing and feel how your scalp completely relaxes as this warm honey pours over your head. Feel it relaxing your forehead and your eyebrows, pouring down your brow and over into your eye sockets. Relaxing all the little muscles around the eyes that hold a lot of tension. Feel it pouring over your temples and ears, your cheeks, your nose, your mouth, back of your head, jaw, back of the tongue. It's that very special area. If you can relax the back of the tongue, it relaxes the whole region of the body. Back of the head and the jaw and the neck, shoulders. Just breathing and letting go. Completely letting go. Feeling this warm honey pouring down your arms, all the way down to the hands and the fingers, relaxing all of those muscles. feeling it pouring over your shoulders, your upper back, and your upper chest. Feel it pouring down over your diaphragm, down your mid-back. Down to the stomach, abdomen, lower back. Down over the pelvis, buttocks, front of the pelvis, especially the psoas muscles, which run down the front of the hips on the right and the left. That also relaxes a whole region of the body. Just breathing. Just letting go. Feel the warm honey pouring down over your legs. All the way down the knees, lower legs, ankles, feet, and toes. But just feeling this warmth and deeply relaxing energy flowing over your whole body from head to toes and fingertips. And I'll be quiet for a few moments while you scan your body again. One more time, from head to toes, just breathing light and relaxation into any place where you might still be holding on to any tension. So just continuing to breathe and let go. And let's put our attention in the center of the heart, right in the center of the chest. And if you need to, you can, with your finger, you can touch the center of your chest and just tap your breastbone a little bit, which helps put your attention there. And just feel the heart chakra opening, like a beautiful flower out in front of your chest. Feel it and visualize it like a pink rose. Just unfurling its petals and opening up and out in front of you. And feel where that heart chakra connects to your core that runs right down the center of your body, inside your body. Put your attention there, right in the middle of your chest, inside the chest cavity itself. And it's helpful sometimes to visualize it as a miniature sun, like a brilliant light that's radiating a beautiful love energy inside of you. You can give it a color. Pink is often a good color. Sometimes gold is good. Whatever you feel works for you, but most important to just feel the love radiating. As you feel that sun glowing inside your chest, also let's open the back of the heart chakra. And you can also visualize another rose blooming out of the back side of your chest, between the shoulder blades. So just feel that heart chakra opening in the back. We often forget about this part of this subtle physical anatomy, but it's such an empowerment right now to get in touch with the back of the heart. The back of the body is where we tend to shove all of our unconscious stuff, the things we don't want to look at. So as you open the back of the heart chakra, you might become aware of things that you hadn't thought about before. You don't know what it might be. It could be anything. Could be people projecting negativity at you, or it could be your unkind thoughts about somebody else. Whatever we shove into the unconscious, it can kind of become conscious when we open this back part of the heart. So just be kind with yourself. If negativity arises or something unusual arises, just witness it. Just be okay with it. Allow it to arise and pass through you. Let go of it. This is good. This is making the unconscious conscious. And it's also helpful to visualize a flow, like a river flowing through the heart. Excuse me. So, for example, you can have the river flowing from behind you through into your back, through your chest, and out the front. And just feel and visualize as you do this all the shadow aspects that are stuffed in the unconscious behind the heart flowing away, just flowing off into the horizon in front of you, like a beautiful, gentle stream, like a babbling brook, just gently washing the heart center clear. Just feel the flow. Feel the love. It's the energy of love. It's lighthearted, it's uplifting, can feel inspiring, even joyful. It's deep relaxation that leads to love. It starts with the deep relaxation and it becomes inner peace. And the inner peace becomes love. And as you allow that inner peace and love to build, it becomes joy. If you allow it. And you might find yourself smiling. I know I often do with this exercise. And it's okay if you're not. You know, if you're in grief or there's something negative going on in your life and you don't feel like smiling or feeling joyful, that's okay. But it is a good way to do it if you want to feel a little joy. This is a great exercise for that. Just letting this river wash your heart clear and feel the love passing through you. Feel the love filling up your whole body. You can send it down the body all the way down to the root. The root is at the base of the spine, in case you're new. And you can send it down from there into the earth as your grounding cord all the way down to the center of the earth, connecting with the core of the earth, and feeling very grounded and held by Mother Earth, supported, nurtured, anchored. So let's be with that for a moment, be with our connection with Gaia. We are part of her. We're made of dust, made of the same stuff the earth is made of. These physical bodies are. So feel your connection with Gaia through the form of the chair or the floor. And then draw that earth energy back up into your body. Feel that nurturing quality of Gaia supporting you from below. And then let's draw that energy, that earth energy up through the body, up to the heart, where we still have that river passing through the heart, washing us clean, filling us with love. And let's continue to draw the earth energy up to the crown chakra, to the very top of the head. And just by putting our attention on the top of the head, if you're sensitive, you can feel the crown chakra starting to open like 1,000-petaled lotus, unfurling petal by petal on top of your head, opening up and out. And it's okay if you don't feel this. That's perfectly normal to not feel it. It's just eventually you'll be able to feel it if you practice it enough. And just visualize it in the meantime and set your intention that you'd like to experience it, because it is actually a very real thing. The subtle body is very real. And as you relax and let go and allow the crown to open, I'm going to say a prayer and an invocation for our call today. We call on the Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, the Self that we all are. We call on all the guides and teachers who surround us in the highest love and support. And we ask that you please surround us today in a beautiful cocoon of healing white light and love. Please guide our conversation today into the highest love and the highest wisdom. And hold our hands as we walk into our soul's highest purpose. And we give thanks for this opportunity to be together today. And as well as if you're listening in the future, you are included in this, because as I said, there is no time and space. So we're grateful for the field of love that we share, the timelessness, and the opportunity to share love and to share this beautiful opportunity on planet Earth. Beautiful, beautiful planet in these amazing bodies that are on loan to us from Mother Earth for a few years. At this extraordinary time in our evolution, where we are poised on the threshold of a whole new paradigm of the heart. And what a gift to be here and experience this and participate and be midwives for the birth of the new paradigm of the heart. With deep, deep gratitude. Alalaho. Alalaho is Tibetan, and it means, isn't it wonderful? Oh. You can stretch a little bit, and when you feel ready, slowly start to open your eyes. Or you can stay in meditation if you like. Up to you. Well, I'm so happy to be here with you. As I said at the beginning of the call, just give me a moment. I'm going to just check my phone real quick. I have to make sure it's on Do Not Disturb. I heard a ping before. I hope that doesn't happen again. All right, I think we're okay. So welcome again. Let's just dive. We got a lot to talk about, so let's dive into the topics for the day. The first topic is about the rising power of the feminine. And the last couple of months, we've talked about that. And I'd like to touch on that theme again because the energies are still with us in a very powerful way. And also, I've received a lot of feedback from people that the discussions from the past couple of months have been especially helpful. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I can't tell you how many people I know, and that includes spiritual teachers and seers and authors and sensitives and other people who everybody's talking more and more about this theme that we've been discussing the past couple of months, the different forms of the rising of the feminine power or the yin power. And everybody uses different language to describe it and different approaches to understand it. And I find it's interesting that many people don't look at it as the rising of the feminine power. But I've found it really helpful to view it in terms of our stepping more and more into that feminine power. So just as a reminder, the feminine powers that we've been talking about embracing the last couple of months are, in June, we talked about paradox and emotion. And in July, we talked about the unknown and flexibility. And the opposites, the yang masculine opposites of those are logic versus paradox, mind versus emotion, the known versus the unknown. It's also similar to form or structure versus formlessness and a lack of structure, and rigidity versus flexibility. So I'm not going to speak in depth about those four feminine powers today because we did that in June and July. But if you missed either of those and you want more information about them, they're available to listen to on our free resources page at corelight.org or on YouTube. So I guess just suffice it to say that we're in a time right now when it's really important to recognize that we're being called to get more comfortable with these feminine yin principles or powers, as I like to call them, because that's what they are. They're powers, these things. They're powerful, full of power. They're equally as powerful as their yang masculine counterparts. It's just that we're not taught that. You know, our patriarchal culture teaches us that the feminine side is weak and inferior and worthless, when in reality, that couldn't be farther from the truth. So if you're listening to this call, then I'm sure you're a sensitive and you've had the experience of the power of the feminine side, so you know what I'm talking about. But in general, in our patriarchal culture, most people, I would say they tend to fear the feminine side because it's hidden. The power of the feminine side is invisible to 3D eyes. 3D eyes only see the surface appearance, and that's why the masculine or the yang side is seen as powerful and superior, and the feminine is supposedly weak and inferior. And we judge ourselves, and we judge other people for being, for example, too emotional, right? Or illogical, or too formless. So we not only fear the feminine side, but we also tend to feel shame around it and even worthlessness. You know, if we're not in the masculine side, in the logical, mental, form-oriented world, we tend to denigrate the other side and denigrate ourselves. So, and I just, to be clear, I always say this, but I just want to be super clear. I'm not talking about men and women. I'm talking about masculine and feminine energies, or it's what the traditional Taoists call yin and yang. And so no matter what your gender identification is, we all have both masculine and feminine inside of us. So a really important part of our journey right now is undoing this programming that we've been given, because it's not the truth. The truth is that the masculine and the feminine are equal and opposite in power. And it's just that the feminine side is hidden to 3D eyes, as I said. It's not visible to anyone who looks only through the lens of the patriarchal culture and the programming we get. So how do we do that? How do we move beyond the 3D programming? And I know most of you know this because you've been around Core Light for a long time. It's through practicing witnessing, right? And doing self-inquiry, releasing all of our old habits of thinking and so on. And if you've been with Core Light for any length of time, you know that that's a lot of what we do. We offer support with all of that. And especially our book, The Marriage of Spirit. And it explains what witnessing is, and it offers some very simple but powerful journaling techniques for processing away that programming. So if you're new to Core Light and you want information about that, I won't be speaking about it on the call per se. I won't explain it all, but you can find it in our book on the website at corelight.org, and again, it's called The Marriage of Spirit. So last month we talked about the importance of embracing flexibility and getting more comfortable with being in the unknown. And those energies are definitely still with us. So I just wanted to bring them up again as a reminder and to elaborate just a little bit on it. For example, I know a lot of people who are still not clear about the things that are happening in their lives. For example, relationships, projects, business issues, body stuff, finances, and so forth. It's like we're in a kind of a haze sometimes with these things, and it can also bring up the fear and the anxiety for us. So I know a lot of people are experiencing this right now. So I wanted to talk about transmuting fear and anxiety a little bit. So if this applies to you, there are a few important practices to remember. And if you're experiencing fear and anxiety, just naming that issue is the first big step. Just acknowledging that fear and anxiety are there, it puts you more in the witness state. So if you do nothing else, just reminding yourself that you're the pure awareness, you're pure consciousness, and that the vibrations of fear and anxiety are passing through you. This is a huge relief, mentally and emotionally. And sometimes using the affirmation, fear is just a frequency, is really helpful. And then it's easier to witness the fear and anxiety as vibrations that are passing through you, because that's the truth of what's really going on. And also I want to say, even if you're not aware of fear and anxiety right now, they're still in the collective in a really big way right now. So it might be unconscious or subconscious for you, but it's still affecting you. It's affecting everybody, whether you realize it or not. For example, I know quite a few people who are experiencing disturbed sleep lately. And a lot of it's because of the fear and the anxiety that come up around so many changes and unknowns in our lives and just in the world in general right now. There's so much change happening and there's just a lot of unknowns. So we tend to process that unconscious stuff at night during the sleep time. And whether it's personal or collective, doesn't matter. We're all transmuting so much shadow at so many levels right now that some of it has to be done during sleep. And I feel like for the most part, we don't have a clue about most of what's going on at those levels, especially the collective stuff, the collective shadow that we're all helping to transmute. Because we all do that to the degree that we're able. So if you're experiencing some disturbed sleep, you're not alone. And if you're one of the lucky ones who's experiencing very sound sleep right now, that's fantastic. Just feel blessed. I can tell you personally, there have been some nights lately where I wake up at like 3 a.m. and I'm wide awake and I can't get back to sleep. And I know if I try to get back to sleep, it's going to be fitful. So I tend to just get up and start my day super early, and I'll have a long meditation and do some Tai Chi or whatever, or some yoga. But some nights I've been sleeping like 8 and 10 hours, and I wake up in the same position. So it's really all over the map. It's just kind of wild. I've rarely, like as an adult, I've rarely experienced sleeping 8 to 10 hours and waking up in the same position. But that's been happening too. So I don't know what to say about it, except I hear this from a lot of people, that it's just kind of odd, strange. You don't know what to expect. But again, like I said, it's a lot of this, I think, is the shadow that we're working with at night. And then we get a break from it. So anyway, whether you're conscious of the fear and the anxiety affecting you and you can feel it, it might be causing things like disturbed sleep for you, or even if you may not be conscious that fear and anxiety are affecting you per se, it's still happening at some level. And it's just helpful to know about this. It might explain some of the strange things that you're experiencing. Even, there's quite a bit of strange behavior in people in general right now that I'm aware of, and I've heard this from a number of people as well. So if you're feeling especially on edge or reactive, or however it might be playing out in your life or in other people in your life, just be aware that this is what it's about. It's about this massive amount of shadow that's being transmuted right now, ancestral karmas as well, as we've talked about. We carry those karmas down from generation to generation. So we don't even know what our ancestors went through, but it may be something that we've made an agreement to clean up. The buck stops here, so to speak. So it's good to be aware of it. And it's a good time to be especially mindful of how it's affecting our relationships with other people. People can be super sensitive and overreactive because of what's going on like this. And the changes, the unknowns, the fear, the anxiety, it all tends to put everybody on edge at some level, even if it's subconscious. So it's a good time to stay in your own lane, so to speak, and to be mindful of your boundaries and be respectful of other people's boundaries, and witnessing. Witnessing all of this is the first big step in that process. And then, of course, there are all the other practices that we know of that help us move through fear and anxiety and through all of these challenges that we might be experiencing. And those are things like using the mental emotional processing techniques that Core Light offers, and all of the various other emotional release therapies that are out there. And I know we all have our favorites, but also all the practical things that help us move the energy through the body. Things like exercise and massage and acupuncture, dancing, singing, being in nature. All of these things are so important to be practicing right now. And I know I can feel some people rolling their eyes because I know I say this almost every month. And sometimes I feel like a broken record, but I guess it's kind of like the dentist reminding us about flossing our teeth every day. It's like these kinds of self-care practices are sort of like flossing our teeth nowadays, you know. We just have to do them. So anyway, like we spoke about last month, it's the perfect time to practice being flexible and becoming more comfortable with being in the unknown. And what I would add that's new this month is that it's important to let go of any kind of overthinking or obsessing or any of that kind of energy about any things in your life that aren't clear. We're in the process right now of getting clearer on things. So practicing patience is helpful, and trusting in a kind of a higher perfection that we might not be able to see quite yet. And I know just hanging out in that formless unknown and trying to be flexible and patient are really hard for most people. And again, this is our patriarchal program. You know, the ego wants the form. It wants the structure. It wants the known. We want it now, you know. We don't want to wait. It reminds me of that cartoon or that meme with the two vultures that are talking to each other, and the caption is something like, "Patience my ass, I want to kill something." And you know, in general, I don't like to anthropomorphize animals, and I know that's an insult to our vulture brothers and sisters, but it is funny in its way because I know we can all relate to that feeling of impatience when we really want something and we can smell it's close. And that's kind of what's happening right now. But the truth is that if we just give things a little more time, then the clarity will come and we'll be able to make the changes and to create the forms that we need. So if you're not getting a very clear picture of what your next action step is, it's okay to just wait a little bit longer and not take any action yet. It's a really good practice right now just to be in the moment, to be with what is, to just sit in the unknown a little bit longer if you need to. I guess I can give you an example. I can share my personal experience of the past couple of months. I've been working with my team really intensely this year to create a new online learning management system so that we can offer Core Light's courses in a really beautiful, impeccable way. And it's taking a lot longer than we thought. And I know many of you have been waiting for the new version of the Spiritual Warrior Training course and the Marriage of Spirit course. And I'm really sorry that they're not ready yet. I thought they would be by now. So the update is that it seems like, you know, we make a lot of progress and then we discover some issue that needs to be sorted out. And so it's sort of like 2 steps forward and 1 back. And sometimes 2 back. And it feels a little bit, I used this analogy the other day and I like it. It's like you're climbing up onto the high dive and you're summoning all of your courage and your resources to make that scary leap into the pool. And then just as you get out onto the end of the board at the last minute, somebody shouts, "No, not time to jump yet." You got to climb down again. And you have to do some more groundwork because there's still some housekeeping or foundation building or whatever it is that needs to happen. You know, it's like we're allowing space for redirection or for like a course correction that might be needing to happen right now. Reminds me of that old saying, how do you make God laugh? You tell God your plans. And so we make our plans, and then we have to remember about surrender, and trust in the divine timing of things. And I know so many people in this situation, so I thought it would be helpful to talk about today. And it's a time when there are some doors that are closing, but there are also new ones that are opening. And you might be experiencing, like, for example, the end of a relationship or the end of an old kind of work, or living in a certain place, or, ending a certain phase of your life in some way. It's like an old way of life is crumbling and falling away, but there are also these very, they feel to me like big new opportunities. There's some big new doors opening. And it's all part of the formlessness and the unknown quality of these times that we're in. So it's not just about fear and anxiety about change, but there's also this sense of excitement and inspiration about whatever the new opportunity is. So if we can cultivate like a sense of adventure, I would say, about it, and find the fun in that, that can be a really helpful way to approach whatever's going on in your life. I know that's been my practice. And there's a part of us that knows and trusts that there's some perfection to all of this. And if you're sensitive, you can feel that there are forces at work behind the scenes. There's a bigger picture that's unfolding, but we're only allowed to see a certain section of the puzzle right now. So occasionally we might catch glimpses of the bigger picture, and if you're claircognizant to any degree, you know that there is a bigger picture unfolding, which is inspiring and it's helpful, but we're really being asked to trust and to surrender a lot. And I guess I just want to say, if claircognizant is a new word for you, it just means clear knowing. So just like clairvoyant means clear seeing, claircognizant means that you know something. You know that you know something. You don't know how you know what you know, but you know that you know what you know. So I love that word, because that's how things have always worked for me. I've had mystical experience. I've had many mystical experiences where I've been shown something that is clear. It's like claircognizance, but occasionally I'll have like a clairvoyant or a clairaudient, which means clear hearing of the inner voice. But it's mostly for me claircognizance. So I never had a word for it. And when I learned that word, it was a huge sense of relief for me to have a name for that experience. So it's very affirming, and I wanted to share that with you just in case that's helpful for you as well. When I share it with people, sometimes, I get a lot of ahas. So I hope that's helpful for you. So anyway, we're circling around another feminine power right now that I wanted to name today, which is important to embrace right now. And it's slowness. And the polar opposite of that, of course, is, as you know, speed. Right? So speed would be the yang or the masculine quality, which is the side of the polarity that's valued in the patriarchal culture, and slowness is the yin quality or the feminine quality, which is considered inferior in our culture. And again, I just want to be super clear here. I'm not talking about men and women. I know this can sometimes feel insulting to people. I've had workshops where I've said this, and I can tell some people feel insulted by it, to say that slowness is a feminine quality. And so I apologize to anybody, if you might be feeling insulted by this. It's certainly not my intention to insult anybody. And if that's happening for you, I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with men and women. Nothing to do with men being fast or women being slow. That is not what this is about. It's not what I'm saying. what we're talking about is the traditional Taoist principles of yin and yang. And we all have both inside us. Yin and yang are just very loosely translated in the West as feminine and masculine. But the truth is that it's this ancient spiritual tradition that has nothing to do with gender. It's just how it's been translated in the West in modern times. So anyway, I find this whole thing about slowness really interesting, because if you think about it collectively, we've been in this phase of moving more and more into the feminine powers for more than a couple of years now with the whole COVID thing. And so much of this time period has been about slowing down. You know, that's been one of the biggest gifts of this time, the last few years, is even if we haven't necessarily been able to see it as a gift, it is one. And I think it's just important to take stock of that. So whatever your experience of the past 2.5 years or so have been, it's certainly been a time to slow down or even stop. And there's certainly been a great benefit to that. And our world has been moving so fast for so long during patriarchy that it's really important to be reminded of the power of slowing down and even stopping and recognizing the benefits of this. So, for example, as I was saying, it's a great time right now to take stock. And I mentioned this last time too, but it's very true for right now. I know plenty of people who are experiencing a lot of power in doing this exercise of just pressing the pause button on life for a few moments and just taking a big step back and looking at the bigger picture of their lives. So things like setting goals, reviewing our life's purpose, seeing how far along the path we've come. You know, these are all really powerful exercises. So there are some questions that you could journal about. These are the kinds of questions that I've been working with and I'm sharing with other people. Am I really living my highest purpose? Is my soul feeling fulfilled with what I'm doing right now? I'm just going to read these to you. They're about 6 questions. What personal transformation has happened so far in my life? And how is that being reflected to me by the people and the situations in my life? In other words, what's the mirror for me? What's the mirror of life showing me about myself in terms of my transformation? If I only had a week to live, or a month, or a year, or 3 years, what would I like to do with my remaining precious time? What have I accomplished in my life? What have I not accomplished yet that I really want to? So I share those with you because whenever I've done this exercise with people lately, and I speak for myself too, we've seen that there are these milestones that we've crossed lately that are really important to acknowledge. And we've found that it's a great time to get clear on what we really want out of life, what really matters to us. Why did our soul come here? What did we come here for? So this is a great time for doing just a little bit of a life review and journaling about those things. And like I say, I know I mentioned it last time. If you didn't have a chance to do that exercise, now is a great time. We're coming out of the power of August and the Lion's Gate window, which we talked about at the last Spiritual Weather Report. And as I said, it's one of the most powerful times of the year energetically, maybe the most powerful time. So I really recommend taking the time now to do that exercise, even if it's just for a few moments or even an hour or so one day. But it's really helpful if you can make it like an ongoing exercise for the next few weeks. So I invite you to spend a little time, a few days a week on it maybe, leading up to the September equinox, which is September 22nd. At least it's 22nd in the U.S. I'm not sure about other countries, but around that time. And that's another power moment. So all of that being said, there's a triangle that feels important to name here. And if you're new to Core Light, you're not familiar with triangles, with the triangle exercise that we offer, you can find out more about that in that same book I talked about, The Marriage of Spirit. It's a really simple little journaling technique. It's very powerful for integrating polarities and moving the energy into the heart. So the polarity, the yin-yang polarity that we're talking about is slowness versus speed. And so what would the ascended balance state be at the top of the triangle for you? If slowness and speed are the polarity at the bottom of the triangle, what would you put at the top of the triangle as an ascended balance state? So for me, it was patience. And I came up with two words, patience, and another word was surrender. And as I've said many times, there's no right and wrong here. Everybody has a different answer. So if you came up with a different word for your ascended balance state, that's fine. It's just patience and surrender are the words that I find the most powerful here for me. Can you feel, when you feel into those words, can you feel how they bring the energy of that polarity of slowness and speed up into the heart space? They kind of create like an energetic resolution in the body. So we're really talking about the state of spiritual surrendering. And as I said, I'd like to talk about that a little bit more today because sometimes it's confusing as to what that actually means. And some people feel scared by it. So we're going to talk about that. But before we go into what spiritual surrendering is, I also just wanted to complete on slowness versus speed. I think it's really important to point out the power in holding the tension between the two sides of that particular polarity. In other words, it's not that slowness is better than speed or speed is better than slowness. Those are equal and opposite powers. And if we can practice holding the tension between the two, it's like gold. So what does that look like? What does holding the tension between the two sides really look like in a practical way? I guess it could be just as simple as witnessing, right? Witnessing if we have a strong desire to go faster than we're really able to. It might look like impatience or maybe fear or anxiety that, we should be moving faster than we're able to. And the key word there is should. It indicates that there's some egoic programming at work there because that's what happened. We got programmed by our culture to value speed, not slowness. So we might be feeling, wrong or ashamed or worthless or afraid or depressed or whatever it is if we're feeling like we're not fast enough or we're not being productive enough. And productivity, that's another one. Productivity in the physical world is a yang power. It's the visible form of power. But there's also the equal and opposite yin kind of productivity, and that's the productivity of the inner growth and the rest and the relaxation. Those powers are just hidden to 3D eyes, but you can't have the yang kind of productivity without taking the time for the yin. It's just like, we have to sleep in order to be productive during the day. Our muscles need rest time in order to grow. So just witnessing all of that and recognizing it for what it is and processing it in whatever way you need to, and then just letting it all go and moving back into joy. That's a great practice for right now. It's like there's some kind of push inside us that wants to start manifesting things in the physical world. And it's important to remember that the manifestation in the physical is coming. It will come. It's just not quite time yet. And if it feels like we're pushing a river, then we know it's time to witness our desire for speed and for manifestation. And we just need to relax, to allow the slowness and the patience and to just trust in the perfection of the divine timing. So part of holding that tension between the two sides is realizing that we have a choice. We're not bound to one side because of our programming. We can use our discernment as to whether or not to go slow or to move fast, depending on what the situation calls for. We're not locked into one side because of the patterning. We're able to choose. And we can choose based on things like what's being supported right now by the energies. What does our heart tell us to do? What's the body telling us to do? What is Spirit saying to us? So just like we're being asked to go slow and to be patient right now, there's this equal and opposite push to start manifesting in the physical. And so holding the tension between the two sides of the polarity is about things like practicing non-attachment to either side, allowing that situation to just be what it is, allowing time for renewal, for redirection, if you need to, learning to be comfortable, just hanging out in the unknown and the formlessness for a little while longer, like we said, and practicing discernment, knowing we have a choice, trusting in the perfection of the divine timing of all of it. Okay, so I think that's enough on that. I hope that's helpful. It's also important to talk about slowness and patience this month. And it leads into one of our other themes for the month, which is spiritual surrender. So let's go there next. Let's take a look at what that really is. Different people have different definitions of spiritual surrender. And personally, I like to think of it as turning my life over to the divine. For me, it's about practicing faith and trust, especially seeing the perfection of life as it is, no matter how it's unfolding, even if it's not necessarily what we might have wanted. And I know the idea of surrender can sound really scary sometimes because there's a part of us that fears, let's say, abdicating our power and being out of control, right? And being passive. These things can be scary since the ego is synonymous with control. It's just human nature to fear that word surrender at some level. We fear surrendering anything at that level. So let's talk about what surrendering doesn't mean first, and then we'll talk about what it does mean. Surrendering does not mean that we're not manifesting our dreams. It doesn't mean that we're not co-creating our lives with the divine. It's not about being so passive that we never do anything and we have no incentive. That would be impossible anyway. I mean, just try to not have experiences, right? Try to not take any action, and there's just no way that can ever happen. It's not why we incarnate as humans on planet Earth. Life is always full of richness and activity, even times when we're slowing down, even times of what could be seen as inaction. It's full, very full, if we have the eyes to see. So we still co-create our lives with the divine when we practice spiritual surrendering. We still set our goals We can create vision boards and we can manifest our desires and all of that kind of thing. That's one of the main reasons we incarnate. It's to fulfill our desires. That's part of the purpose of being in a human body, is to fulfill desires. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that with surrender, we turn that over. We turn the outcome of it and the timing of it over to the unfathomable intelligence of the divine. So surrendering, it's a lot about accepting what's unfolding in our lives and witnessing and moving through all the feelings that arise around that journey. And it's especially about witnessing and working through any feelings of victimization that might arise when things don't go, as we might have hoped or planned for. And that's really the key. So I'm just going to repeat that. Surrendering is especially about witnessing and working through any sense of victimization that we might feel when things don't go as we'd hoped. And so that's a big topic. It could become, a much bigger conversation, and it's not really within the scope of our call today. But I thought we should at least touch on it, talk about it just a little bit, because it's so important for the times that we're in. And I thought the best way to talk about this is to give an example. And the example is in the best book that I've ever read about spiritual surrendering. And it's called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. You know that book? The title again, in case you want to write it down, the full title is The Surrender Experiment, My Journey into Life's Perfection by Michael Singer. I mentioned it on the call a few years ago when I first read it. I can't remember what year it was, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't usually recommend books on these calls, but if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I really, really recommend this one, because it's such a great example of surrendering and how that path of surrendering can lead to a very deep awakening. It's a very inspiring and uplifting story, and it's perfect for right now. It's fun. It's easy to read because it is a story, and even if you've read it already, it's a great time to reread it, especially if you're feeling challenged with all of the changes and the formlessness and the unknown of these times that we're in. So I know for me, when I have felt challenged lately around all of this, especially when I feel fear and anxiety passing through me, it's been very comforting to remember that book, because it's a true story. And it's sort of like with each chapter, you think the level of surrender that he's going to have to make can't get any bigger. But then the next chapter, the stakes get even higher, and he's asked to surrender even more. And you wonder how the heck he's going to do it. And, I was going to say, here's a spoiler alert, but it's not really a spoiler alert, because I think this is on the back cover of the book. But it's by the end of the book, there are literally billions of dollars at stake, and the fates of thousands of employees of this company that he spent his life building. They're all at stake. So it's true. I'm not going to tell you anymore, because that really would be a spoiler. So it's just truly a remarkable and inspiring story. And I bring it up specifically this month because personally, I feel like for the past couple of months, I've been in my own daily surrender experiment. Some days, if I wake up in a fog, like I know so many people are experiencing right now, and if I'm feeling fear and anxiety passing through me and I can't see what the big picture is, first step, breathe and get into the witness. And then I remind myself of that book, Michael Singer's book, and his surrender experiment story. And it's just comforting to remember his story, where so much more is at stake than in my situation. I think, if he can go through that and still hold his witness and still hold his heart open and still be okay, risking billions of dollars in the fates of thousands of employees, then I can do what I have to do, no problem. This is really easy compared to that. At that point, I just witness all the emotions passing through. And I just breathe deeply and I relax and I consciously turn my life over to the divine. And I ask to be shown, what's the next step that I have to take today? Just the next step, just for today. And then I only do that. And the key is remembering to keep the heart open in the midst of whatever the challenge is, and not to get stuck in fear, not to get stuck in feeling victimized and betrayed. And if that happens, if we do start feeling, hard done by, then it's important to witness that as much as we're able to, and we let it go as much as we possibly can. And the same is true for the fear and whatever other emotions might be coming up. So practicing witnessing is the key. And this is the path of opening the heart. It's the path of continually coming back again and again to the witness and to the opening of the heart. And the path of surrender leads to a more open heart and eventually to a permanently opened heart. And it's where we discover a greater and greater capacity within us to love. And with enough practice, eventually we get to the place where we experience ourselves as love. We discover that love is what we're made of. We know that we're love. We actually become love. And we see there's nothing that's not love. And when you're in that state, where you're so saturated with love, you can even learn to love your problems. And then love just spills over into everything, to all your activities, and you naturally start doing service work and you focus more on helping other people, and it becomes about putting your love into action. But the truth is, you don't even have to act. You can just be love, because just being in that state means that you're radiating that vibration out into the world no matter what you do. So even if you're not, doing anything, you're still serving by sharing that vibration. It happens by osmosis. So that's the path of spiritual surrender, and we could talk more about it, but maybe that's enough for right now. I want to make sure we get to the last topics, and then we have some questions. So the last topic I wanted to bring up today is about clearing cynicism and despair. So I'm aware that cynicism and despair are energies that are circulating in the collective right now. And I've heard people say things like, we're just livestock. And things like, all is lost. Things are never going to change. And I can understand why people would feel that way. And, I don't have any judgment about people who choose to believe that. Because if you look at the surface appearance, if you believe what we're being told, of course, it would be totally natural to believe that. But I feel like those of us who can see beyond the surface appearance and who choose to go just a little bit deeper, we realize that this just isn't the truth. It's just what the forces of separation are inviting us to believe. Because when we adopt an attitude of cynicism and despair, we are completely disempowered. We become victims. And then we're stuck. We're stuck in that loop of victim, tyrant, savior, where we always have a tyrant outside of us who we can blame, and, and we're always looking for the savior outside of us to rescue us. And as victims, we don't have to take any responsibility. We don't have to step into our empowerment, and we're stuck in that system, that old system of separation. So cynicism and despair are things to really watch out for, and to witness yourself doing those, because they're very easy to fall into nowadays, and they're a big trap and incredibly disempowering. So my question to you is, what are the opposites of cynicism and despair? Opposite of cynicism and opposite of despair. What would you say? I'm going to give you a moment, because these are good ones. And sometimes when you think, struggle a little bit to find the opposites, it's helpful. So the opposite of cynicism for me would be naivete, or you could also say gullibility. And the opposite of despair could be hope. And there's an archetypal opposite as well to cynicism and despair. We've talked about this on some previous calls. Do you know what the archetypal opposite to those two would be? There's one archetype that's an opposite to cynicism and despair. It's the Pollyanna character. And I've talked about Pollyanna before, but just as a little reminder, she's the little child who's naive, and she always ignores the negative, and she only ever looks at the positive. And the way people describe the Pollyanna archetype is that she's always portrayed as simple and foolish, and she's only ever looking at the bright side, and she stupidly ignores the reality of the situation, which is supposed to be negative, totally negative. And so that's certainly a polar opposite to cynicism and despair, always looking on the bright side of life, so to speak. But I think, as I said before, I think Pollyanna got a bad rap, because I don't think that's how the author of those books meant to portray her. I think the author's intention was to portray her as having a spiritual quality of purity. So let's just talk about spiritual purity a little bit. When you have purity, you see both sides of the situation. You see the reality that is right in front of you. You see the positive and the negative sides of people and situations. But with purity, you're able to contain both sides, and you can focus on the highest outcome at the same time as containing both sides. So you realize you've got a choice of where you can put your attention and your intention. You're able to hold the tension, there's that tension word again, between the two sides. So you don't buy into cynicism and despair and negativity, which is so easy to do right now. And instead, you practice holding the space for a third option, the transcendent option to manifest. So the invitation to all of us from the invisible realms right now is to recognize this dynamic and to develop this power of purity. So it's about recognizing the polarities, which, as we said, it's cynicism versus naivete or gullibility, and it's despair versus hope, and practicing holding the tension between those sides and allowing for the third transcendent option to manifest. And when you practice that enough, you see that no matter what the surface appearance looks like, no matter what kind of negativity we're being invited into, you see the truth. And it's the truth with a capital T, spiritual truth. And that's the power of purity. So personally, when I use that power and I hear people saying things that are cynical and despairing, I want to scream. I want to shout from the rooftops, no, that's not what's really happening. We're not livestock. All is not lost. Change is happening. It's an incredibly exciting time. This is the most exciting time that we're living in right now. And with the power of purity, you can see beyond that surface appearance, and you know that the new paradigm of the heart is birthing right now. It's birthing within us. It's birthing in the outer world. The truth is starting to be revealed, and it's going to continue to be more and more. And there are definitely challenges. These are challenging times, and there are going to be some very challenging times ahead, I'm sure. But the truth is being revealed, and there are also going to be opportunities to celebrate along the way. And no matter what the world looks like, it's so important to remember that there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with what's happening, even though it looks bad, that there's a perfection to what's happening in the world. Things need to fall apart so that the new can emerge. And when one thing dies, something else is born. One door closes, another opens. And so we're in for a huge rebirth into remembering who we really are. And that's love. And that's spiritual purity. So I know sometimes it feels like we're in a war and we're fighting in the trenches. But we need to remember that we're at the end of a very, very, very long journey. The age of separation has been a long one. And, we've incarnated. If you're listening to this call, I'm sure you've incarnated for many millennia. And we've had our hellish times. The Dark Ages were pretty dark. The Spanish Inquisition was pretty dark. Any war you can name has been pretty dark. But the truth is that we incarnated to experience these things. No accident. We came in as infinite beings to have an experience of the finite and an experience of polarity so that we could know everything. We wanted to know it all. And one of the hardest things to do in life is to see the divine in the ugliness, to see the divine in war, to see the divine in grief and loss and in any kind of painful circumstance. But we incarnated for it. We knew it was going to be hard. But we came here because we're very strong and courageous souls, every one of us. And we knew we could do this, and we could get through to the other side. So, it seems like a scary time. And it's also an exciting time. And if we can remember that we said yes to this, we signed up for it, that helps us get through any feelings of victimization, and cynicism and despair and so on. And also, it's important to remember that this is not just our own personal transformation into our hearts, or even just the earth's transformation into a new paradigm of the heart. But this is universal. We're told that the earth holds a very special place in the galaxy and in the entire cosmos, almost like it's a node point or a chakra center. And when we experience transformation on earth, it has an impact that's much bigger than imagined on other planets and civilizations all over creation. And this is why there's so many highly evolved beings from all over the universe surrounding us right now. They're here. They're supporting us on the inner planes and in all kinds of ways that we can't even imagine. So we're on our surfboards riding this massive wave of support. And it's taking us on an adventure. It's taking us to knowing that we're love. It's taking us to knowing that we are the pure awareness. And we can be awake to that all the time. And we can remember that we're infinite beings having a brief experience of being finite in human bodies that we get to wear for a few years here on this beautiful blue planet. So we can choose to focus on the beauty. We don't need to deny that ugliness and war exist, but we can also choose to focus more on beauty and love and joy. And that's the highest outcome of the spiritual journey, when we experience those things, especially joy. So we can make joy our practice, especially when we start feeling sucked into things like despair and cynicism. We can find ways to process that stuff away and get back into the joy as much as we possibly can. And it reminds me, just to come full circle with our conversation today, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, if you need some practical support in experiencing that energy of spiritual purity, flowers are an amazing physical embodiment of that energy of purity. So if you need some help with developing spiritual purity, bring flowers into your space or sit in the garden and gaze at the flowers. Flowers essentially hold an enlightened consciousness, like I said before. And they can give you the energetic boost that you need during a challenging time to just raise the vibration enough to help you through. So I've said enough. Let's move on to the questions and the sharing. And I just want to start by saying thank you so much. I just am always blown away by the questions and the heartfelt sharing that everybody sends to me. I really appreciate hearing from you. In case you're new, the way this works is that you can email your questions in advance of the call to courses@corelight.org. And if you happen to be on the web call, you can type your questions in on the Q&A board, and those will be for the next month's call. It's not possible for me to answer all the questions, but I do read them all, and I do get to as many of them as I possibly can. And just remember, if your question doesn't get answered by me, then an answer comes from somewhere else, whether it's another teacher or a book or dream or meditation or whatever it is. Okay, so on the last month's Q&A board on the web call, somebody wrote, is there any possibility in the near future of a Develop the Witness course? Well, yeah, I'll definitely be offering a course that includes developing the witness, but unfortunately it has to be after the learning management system is up and running, and I can't offer any courses until that's done. So it's what I was talking about earlier in the call. It's just been incredibly frustrating for me for the project to take so long. And as I said, I'm practicing patience and breathing, surrendering, trusting in divine perfection of the slow timing. So I hear you, and I have a lot of courses that I'm ready to offer, but we have to lay the foundation first. So my apologies for the delay in the timing, and I thank you for asking and for wanting that course. And I'm really looking forward to offering a course on actually, the witnessing will probably be part of the Marriage of Spirit course, because there is a chapter on witnessing in that book, The Marriage of Spirit. So also on the Q&A board last time, somebody wrote, was in reference to what I was saying on the last call about the spiritual power of the Lion's Gate window in August. Are these gifts and possibilities not always open to us? And the cycle simply providing a structure that supports our ongoing remembering and deepening. I ask this because sometimes I feel we create a hierarchy around all that is abundantly offered at all times. Surely we're not limited by celestial moments or signs. And my answer is yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Spiritual power is available to us all the time. I think it's just that there are special astrological alignments and auspicious energies that happen at special moments in time that can affect us in powerful ways. So it's not that opportunities to ascend in consciousness are limited to those moments in time, but if you're on a path of self-discovery, it's really helpful to know about them so that you can use them to your advantage. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I offer these monthly calls. It's to help with a sense of the prevailing energies. So yeah, spiritual power, spiritual truth, they're always available to us. And it's also helpful to have the discernment to know when to apply those spiritual principles so we can maximize our evolution. And then we had a question that was written in that I really appreciated. So I'm going to read this question to you. Bear with me. It's from Tanea. She says, I sent in an application for a vacant position on a public land use committee that discusses issues like wild horses, resource extraction, and other interests like hunting and motorized recreation on state and federal land. If I get selected, I will most likely be the only person that stands for protection and preservation of the land and the wildlife. All of the current members are from industries that want to exploit it or feel entitled to take the land for themselves. I want to do whatever I can to stand up for the wildlife, but I also can't help but have a very cynical view of making any progress. And I fear even being in danger physically, as the meetings are held in very rural areas where it is still the Wild West. I'm also not sure how much I'll be able to control my own severe anger at people who represent interests that will cause harm. Or will I just break down crying if decisions are made to round up more wild horses? I don't know if I have an actual question. I mean, I know I need to process. But am I crazy for even doing this? Am I strong enough? I guess I just want to express how I'm feeling and my concerns that I can use support to hold a level of consciousness that can have a positive effect. So, hi Tanea. First, thank you so much for sharing this. I just think it's so fantastic that you're applying for that position. And no, I do not think you're crazy at all for doing it. I really, really honor you for doing that. Your sharing and your questions are great for all of us. I feel like it's really important for all of us to have this discussion, to talk about our relationship with the natural world, and how do we walk that path of standing up for those with no voice? How do we do that, especially given what's happening in the world, the overwhelming power of the industrial world and the destruction of the earth that we're witnessing? I understand it can feel like just a completely hopeless situation. So good for you. The world definitely needs more people like you in positions like that. What I know of you, Tanea, is you're a person of conscience and heart-centeredness, and you're very sensitive and you're very strong, and you love the natural world. You have courage. You have tenacity. And I find that word interesting. I think it's no accident that your name is Tanea, because you are tenacious. And being tenacious is about keeping that firm hold on something, and being persistent with your cause and not relinquishing your principles. So God bless you for taking on that work. And, I think, just imagine if nobody stood up for the wild horses or the wild places, the natural world would be so much worse off than it is right now. I mean, it's being destroyed at such an alarming rate. It's just shocking. It shocks us to our core. And so I think your being on that committee would make a significant difference because of your consciousness. It's your consciousness that holds power. And we often talk on these calls about the power of consciousness being exponentially more powerful when we're in our hearts and when we're vibrating at higher rates, as opposed to, somebody who's vibrating at a low rate and thinking negative thoughts. So even if you, like at a very practical level, if you get outvoted by people who have selfish motives or who want to exploit the land, it's your consciousness that's going to make a bigger difference than you might think. it's almost like, I think of it like you've got a vote in consciousness that counts for many, many more times the number of votes in the 3D on that committee. And, while you may not see the changes that we're all hoping for right away, it's like you're planting seeds in consciousness. Seeds of light. That's what it is. You're planting seeds of light, and you're holding space for other people to change. You would be modeling something that the other people will see at some level of their consciousness. They're like, they wouldn't know what they're seeing with their 3D eyes, but subconsciously they're going to see the light that you hold. They're going to see who you are and what your motives are and what you're all about. The spiritual principle behind that is that, we all see everything at some level of our awareness. Everybody's completely psychic, but we block our ability to know it. So at some level of their consciousness, those people on the committee know that the time remaining to exploit Gaia is very limited, right? The days are numbered. They know that human selfishness with the natural world is going to end, probably in the not too distant future. So it's just not a sustainable path, and we all know that. So they'll see at some level of their being that you're one of the ones who is here to help midwife this birth of the new paradigm of the heart. And you don't even have to say a word or do anything. They're just going to see it, and it'll take its effect. Just your presence there will have a much bigger effect than you might realize. So, as you said, it would be really important for you to process whatever emotional issues arise for you around all of this. And you mentioned a few in your sharing, and I'm just going to try to I'm going to reread them here. The first thing you mentioned, I remember, was cynicism. What did you say? You said that you can't help but have a very cynical view of making any progress. I thought, that was really interesting that I had already planned to talk about cynicism today before I saw your question. And, there's no accidents to these things. So hopefully what I shared today might help you a little bit to process any cynicism you might be feeling. It's going to be really important for you to let that go. So maybe you could do a square on cynicism and naivete. And you could even do a square on the other polarity, which was despair and hope. And there's no need to be cynical if you know that you're not there to win the vote necessarily, like the 3D vote. If you know that you're not there to win it, then you don't have to be cynical about it. It's much more about your presence and your vibration and just holding your open heart as much as you possibly can. And the more you can model that open heart, then the bigger a difference you'll make. And I'm not saying it doesn't mean that you need to be naive or gullible or be the Pollyanna. That's not what I'm saying. You can see the reality of the situation for what it is. You don't have to bury your head in the sand. And the most important thing is going to be that you bring your purity, your spiritual purity to that committee, which would do more than you know. And remember, the purity was what was at the top of the triangle for those polarities we were talking about. And I think it's great that you're already in touch with your emotions around so much of this. I'm just going to read. There were a couple more things you said that were important. You said, I'm also not sure how much I will be able to control my own severe anger at people who represent interests that will cause harm. Or will I just break down crying if decisions are made to round up more wild horses? So that's great. I mean, already you're clearly in touch with anger and sadness about this. And so it's just great to be aware of it before going into the situation. So let's talk a little bit more about this part, because I feel like this is at the heart, no pun intended, but this is at the heart of what you're sharing, and it's probably going to be the main practice that you're going to need to focus on if you do take that position on the committee. So first of all, it's important that you allow yourself to feel and express all the emotions. You let them all pass through you. You need to let the heart have its due. It's going to be critical that you practice witnessing through all of that. And I know you've got a strong witness since you've been around Corelight for a while. You know how to do it. But just in case it's helpful, I can share that the method that I use that's worked really well for me with witnessing. When the emotions are super intense, especially things like anger or sadness or grief, I go into a private space where I can close the door and lock it, be alone. And I start with a prayer. And I call on my spiritual guides. And I just say, all right, I'm in my witness. And I'm feeling all these awful emotions. It's so uncomfortable. And then I name them as best I can. I know that I'm pure awareness. And these vibrations are passing through me. And now I'm going to let them all pass through. And I need support. I'm asking for support from the spiritual realms with the release. And then I just let it rip. And I cry or I scream into my pillow or whatever it is I need to do. And then after a while, after I feel like I've vented enough and it dissipates and it's finished, I feel done. And it just depends on how intense the situation is. But usually it's not too much time before I can move back into joy again. And I think that's also worth emphasizing. It's that it's important not to wallow in the emotions and to keep playing that same tape over and over again and getting stuck in the sadness and the anger all the time, because that's not productive. If that's what's happening, then there's some deeper process going on there that you would need to look at. And it would most likely have to do with victim, tyrant, savior, rebel, martyr process. If you're getting stuck mostly in the sadness and the suffering, I would suggest doing some work on the martyr persona. Because remember, the martyr is the savior who's also a victim at the same time. And I know processing martyr consciousness isn't easy, and I'm not trying to make light of the pain that we feel around these issues, the destruction of the environment or the suffering of animals. I mean, it's just heartbreaking, it's sad beyond comparison. And there's nothing wrong with feeling the sadness. It's just that if we're stuck in it all the time, then it becomes a different kind of issue because it's going to hold us back. So if we're running that martyr program, then we usually feel like it's our responsibility to save the world. That's kind of what the martyr is about. And so we would feel overwhelmed. We would feel victimized by trying to take on too much, persecuted, even just trying to save a species or even just one animal. It can feel overwhelming. So really, it's best to let that process go. All you can do is help with your immediate situation, whatever that is. Just do what's right in front of you. And I think in this situation, it's also really important to remember that there's an ultimate spiritual truth behind all of this. And that spiritual truth is that the greatest gift you can give the world is your own spiritual awakening. And that means you change the world when you change yourself. So I think if you're on this committee, Tanea, you would be faced over and over again with your own inner processes, and it would be really important for you to keep doing that inner clearing work and witnessing all those emotions, freeing yourself up in those ways. And that'll be a huge opportunity for you, personally, but also to make a big difference in the world. So the other emotion that you mentioned was anger. You said you weren't sure if you could control your severe anger at people who represent interests that will cause harm. So this would be a great opportunity for you to vent and release anger. And no doubt there's going to be plenty of that to go around. But I would just caution you about a few things. First, I would not recommend directing your anger at the people on the committee. that would not go very well. Especially if it's anger that could spill over into hatred, or if it's anger that might come from a place of blame or judgment. And, that never goes well. People just react badly to that, and it is not productive. So when that happens, everybody just gets more deeply polarized. Especially since you also said that you said you fear even being in danger physically as the meetings are held in very rural areas where it's still the wild, wild west. And you definitely don't want to put yourself in harm's way. So you're going to want to process your anger away from the group. If you find that you're feeling the kind of anger that I'm describing, that's based in, and I'm not saying this is you, I'm just saying if you find this, that it's based in judgment and blame and it might spill over into hatred, then you definitely want to do some work on victim, tyrant, rebel stuff. It's best if you find a way not to direct anger at somebody, but to find other ways of venting anger and releasing it. That's the kind of situation that would keep you stuck in the system of separation. And it doesn't lead to the kind of results that you want. When you direct your anger at somebody, it's actually an act of violence. It's like an act of war, but it's just at an emotional level. And you don't want that. I know you don't want that. You don't want to fight them in that way, because it would just keep the polarity going, and it doesn't resolve into the heart in that way. And I realize this is a much bigger conversation that's not really in the scope of our call today, but I think there's an example that I'm being guided to share with you. I think what might be most helpful here is to just share this example of how to use anger in a productive way. And it's a story that my friend Anna Breitenbach told, who many of you know. Anna's a brilliant interspecies communicator. We taught a course together last year called For the Love of Animals, and we do hope to offer it again next year. And Anna often gets these calls about animal abuse, and so there's plenty of reasons for her to get angry all the time, but she's got such a strong witness, especially with animal rescue. If you're in that field of animal rescue, you know what I'm talking about, and she has. And she's had a lot of practice with witnessing because of that. So she feels anger, she lets it pass through her, and she knows how to channel that energy in a productive way. And so that's the example that I wanted to share with you today, is the story that she told about when she discovered some cows in her area who were starving. There was a drought in the area, a long drought, and there was no grass in the field for them to eat, and they were very, very skinny, and she could see they were suffering. So she contacted the farmer about it, and he was not a very nice man. He basically told her to get lost, and he said that those were his cows, and she shouldn't interfere. She didn't have any right to be involved. And he told her that he'd already called around, and nobody had any feed for the cows because of the drought, and that the cows would just have to be left alone to their own devices. And he was actually pretty rude to Anna and just told her to go away. So she witnessed her anger and other emotions, and she used that energy to find a creative solution to the problem. So she was guided to call around, and finally, after some calls, she found somebody with some feed for the cows. So she went ahead and with her own money, she paid for it and had it delivered, and she went out into the farmer's field to feed the cows. And the farmer saw her out there in his field feeding the cows, and he was outraged. So he stormed out there and he started yelling and screaming at her, and he accused her of trespassing, and he told her to stop and she better leave, and he made a big fuss about all kinds of things, and he was yelling at her, how did she know the feed was the right kind? It might hurt them. Was it safe? And, blah, blah, blah. And so instead of yelling back at the farmer and getting in an argument with him and blasting him, with anger or blame or judgment or whatever, she just kept quiet. And she didn't stop feeding cows. she makes me cry to talk about this story. I'm sorry. So she made a conscious choice to stay in her heart and to not project negativity at the farmer. And she had to find courage, she had to find her courage in order to stay because he was threatening her. And of course, we know that courage is a heart state. So, it requires summoning your heart, finding your courage. And that's what she did. And so she chose to focus on her love for the cows, which was what got her through that. So she just kept on feeding them and remained in her heart, and she stayed quiet. And eventually the farmer calmed down. And so to make a long story short, he eventually realized she was doing the right thing. And so in the end, he thanked her and he apologized to her. So at a certain point she left, and when she got far enough away, she turned around and she looked back at the cows, and she saw that the farmer was still there with them. And in fact, he was starting to reach out very tentatively and touch them and feed them. And she realized that he'd probably never touched his cows. But she could see that somehow he had softened and he'd found his compassion for the cows, and his heart opened to the cows, maybe for the first time ever. So I think the moral of that story is that it was because of her love that the farmer changed his mind, and that he was eventually able to access his heart and find his compassion. Okay, so to wrap that up today, I think lastly, I just want to say that, if this does work out, it may not be easy for you. You may need to give yourself permission to quit if it's necessary, if it's too much emotionally, if it just is too overwhelming, if you start to feel drained, especially if it starts to feel dangerous, then you just need to let it go. And like I said, you definitely don't want to put yourself in harm's way. That's not going to serve. So sometimes being on the front lines can be fine for a little while, but if it becomes too challenging, there's no failure in needing to take a break from it so that you can renew yourself, find a safe space, take care of whatever you need to. But it sure would be a great opportunity on many levels, not just to help make a difference for the horses, and the land, but for your personal clearing and your journey of awakening, and for all the other reasons that I shared. And lastly, you asked for support, and you certainly have it. I will hold you in my prayers, and I'm sure that many people who are listening to the call will also hold you in their prayers. And you have the support of this field that we all hold together, the field of love that we're all part of on this call. And that field includes a huge amount of support from the invisible realms. I just feel like there are legions of angels cheering for you. It's like I can see you surrounded by all that love and support. And I'm sure if you could see it, it would amaze you. So I hope that's helpful, and I wish you all the best with that, and I hope you will keep me posted on how it goes. And I'm looking at the clock, and my goodness, we are out of time. So let's close today with a meditation, a quick, just a 1-2 minute meditation and prayer. So I invite you now to just close your eyes, get really comfortable, and take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Breathing in the light. Breathing out any tension that our conversation might have stirred up for you. Breathing in peace. Breathing out shadow. We give thanks today for the gift of the time that we share with each other, the gift of the field of love. And we make an offering of all of the polarities that we named today. I'm just going to name them again right here, right now, for all of us. We offer up slowness and speed, the unknown and the known, formlessness and form, being foggy and being clear, cynicism and naivete or gullibility, or the Pollyanna character, despair and hope. So we give back to Spirit all of the imbalances here. And we call in balance. We call in all of the ascended balance states that we've named today. We call in patience. We call in surrender. We call in the power of spiritual purity. And we claim these as our birthright, and we ask for divine support with the claiming of our birthright. We claim our strong witness and our ability to live in the heart, to live in love and compassion. To allow all the emotions to pass through us, knowing that we are the pure awareness, pure consciousness. We are the infinite, having a finite experience on this planet at this most auspicious time. And we give thanks, knowing that this is so. We give thanks for the opportunities and gifts that we receive. Please hold our hands as we walk out into the world, into our soul's highest purpose. May all of our thoughts and words and actions contribute in some way to the happiness and awakening of all beings. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alalaho. Well, friends, thank you so much for showing up, being part of this field of love. I just really love being here with you. So grateful to you and many blessings. And I will look forward to being with you again in a month. With all my love. Bye for now.